Hello, everyone, and welcome to At Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to our guest, John Mackey, co-founder of Whole Foods, author, entrepreneur. John, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me here today, Andy.
So you have a new book out. We're going to talk about that. But I want to ask you a little bit about Whole Foods. You sold the company to Amazon in 2017. What have you been doing since then?
Well, the first 5 years, I stayed with the company as a CEO and worked on the transition, because you have to, two pretty large companies, you have to fit them together culturally. If the founder and longtime CEO is there telling everybody, reassuring everybody that it's a good idea, things go better. And that's what I did. And for the last year, though, of the 5, I had already announced that I was going to retire. And we gave I gave a year's notice so that my successor, Jason Beekle, would have a year of kind of running the ship with me there, kind of watching him run the ship. And also toured the whole company and basically thanked everybody, said goodbye. I said goodbye to thousands and thousands of team members. It was very, very heartfelt. I felt really loved and appreciated. I had a really good, long goodbye. And now over the last couple of years, I've co-founded another company called Love Life with several people from Whole Foods that were my longtime executives, like Walter Robb and Betsy Foster, that had worked with me for Whole Foods for decades. And it's kind of a one-stop holistic health wellness club. That's the best way I can put it, because it has a combination of a healthy restaurant. It has a state-of-the-art fitness center and gym. It's got a spa, so for massages and facials and all kinds of recovery modalities. We do all kinds of health optimization, from physical therapy, acupuncture, and then we have pickleball courts for play and community and recreation. And then we have a medical center. And the medical center, it's a little different, so it's not like urgent care. These are medical doctors, but they're functional, integrative lifestyle doctors. And the idea being, Andy, that when do most people go see a doctor?
When they get sick.
Exactly. And we want to change that paradigm over the next 20 or 30 years, so that the doctor's job is really to keep you from getting sick, at least from the chronic diseases, such as heart disease, obesity, diabetes. So we now have the technology that can create a baseline. We know where people can stand on sort of health continuum. And then once you get a baseline established and you have the data, then you can create a precision plan for each individual, a unique plan. And then we can monitor it and see if we're making progress. And so that each person can become absolutely the healthiest they can be, to extend their lifespan, extend their health span, to live a life at a deeper and better level.
And how big is this company right now, Love Life, and how many different centers do you have, and how big do you want it to be?
Well, we have a telehealth business operation. We have a coaching business operation. Those are both digital, online wings of the company. But our first center actually opens up on July 9th in the LA area. Because I like to joke that so I live in Austin, so why didn't you open the first center up in Austin? Well, A, because we couldn't really find, retail's hard to find a big box there right now. But for my long experience, if this idea won't work in Los Angeles, it's not going to work. And it may work in LA and not work anywhere else, but we might as well find out early whether it has legs or not.
And you have big ambitions for this company, a la Whole Foods?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, the skill sets that led us to be successful with Whole Foods, in terms of real estate, in terms of building a culture, building a team, being able to scale, we know how to do all that. So that skill set's going to come in really handy. And so, yeah, do I think I'll still be doing this in 40 years? Very unlikely not. But I'm a great believer of what I call the infinite game. You create a business, not for short term, but you create it for the long term, to live beyond the founders, and to go into the world and hopefully create a lot of value for a lot of people over a very long period of time.
Getting back to Amazon and Whole Foods, John, what do you think about what Amazon's done with that company now?
With Whole Foods?
Yeah.
I get asked a similar question, so I'm going to answer that similar question, and we'll see if it answers the question you asked as well. I get asked all the time, do you regret selling the company to Amazon? And I really think the answer to that is, I regret the circumstances that made selling to Amazon the best alternative for Whole Foods. Because Whole Foods, back in 2017, we were being seriously challenged by shareholder activists, and they weren't willing to bargain with us. They were very clear, Jana Partners, when we met with them, we're going to take over your company, we're going to replace your board, we're going to fire the management team, and we're going to sell this company to the highest bidder, and there's not a darn thing you can do about it. And so we looked at we hired bankers, we looked at our options. We could take it private. We could find a buyer, a friendly buyer. We contacted Warren Buffett, for example, but it wasn't, as he said, it didn't really fit his brand. We could fight. And so that was an alternative we seriously considered. And until the Amazon option popped up, because I had met Jeff Bezos the year before at a Microsoft CEO Summit and hit it off with him. I really liked him. And I'd always admired what he'd accomplished with Amazon. And met with Jeff and his team. And very quickly after that, they sent a team, made us an offer. And 6 weeks after that first meeting, we'd signed a definitive agreement to merge. So Amazon enabled Whole Foods to do some things we couldn't have done independently. Because the main thing Whole Foods needed to do to be competitive over the long term was to change the narrative, the whole paycheck narrative. We were seen as this very expensive company that was out of touch with our customers and blah, 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 blah. Whole Foods had been founded on the idea of the highest quality, the best service. And over time, people copied us and the gap that we had began to lessen. And then they'd undercut us on price, the conventional markets. So we needed to lower our prices. We knew that. But when you have shareholder activists, you're selling something for $1 and you sell it for 90 cents, in the short run, your sales are going to go down, your same-store sales are going to go down, your profits are going to go down, and your stock prices are going to go down. And it makes it very difficult to get rid of shareholder activists by doing what we know we needed to do. But Amazon, 4 times in the first 2 years after the merger, we dropped prices significantly. I love Amazon's ability to take the long-term view. They're not, that's part of Jeff's genius, is they're not short-term players. So they let us cut prices, they raised our wages, and when COVID hit, Amazon's technology, we were able to rapidly scale the delivery programs. Whole Foods could not have done that on our own.
Yeah, I have to say, as a Whole Foods customer, John, I don't see the brand that differently, and I think they've done a very good job of sort of taking it to the next level, really.
So they haven't come in and had they didn't come in with an arrogant attitude like we're Amazon, so you just change everything to be like us. They were very respecting of Whole Foods. Now, of course, there were differences. Yeah. It wasn't perfect. I go into that some in my book about some of the challenges.
Are you an Amazon shareholder?
I am, absolutely.
And so you're bullish on that stock going forward?
Again, Amazon thinks long-term. Right. They keep making good long-term decisions, and when they make mistakes, they abandon them. They're not ego-driven to not admit that some of when they did their Fire phone, for example, they dumped that one.
You've written books before, John, Conscious Capitalism, but this book, The Whole Story, Adventures in Love, Life, and Capitalism. And I love it if you think about the order: love, life, and finally capitalism.
Yes.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But in any event, what's this book about?
This book it's by far the best book I've written, most important book I've written. And first, it's partly a personal memoir because it talks about the origin of the idea, how I got off track, so to speak, from the path my parents had programmed for me to become a professional, a lawyer, a doctor, a professional of some type or another, and how I got off that track. And so I go into it's my own growth as a human being, my own growth as a leader, my own growth, my own spiritual growth, my evolution over time as a human being. That's one of the threads that goes from the very beginning, because it starts when I'm 22 years old, all the way up to the current day. And so we've got almost 50 years. And then secondly, it's the Whole Foods story. That's why it's called The Whole Story. But written from the first person, it reads like a novel. If you dip into it, you'll see that it's got dialogue and it just flows right along. So it's a fun read. And my other books are didactic, Andy. Mm-hmm. Like I've got these messages I want to impart. There are messages in the book, but they are embedded in the narrative as opposed to preaching them to you.
Well, you do have a pretty remarkable story, from a personal standpoint and from a business standpoint. You started a natural food store in Austin in the 1970s, and you were serving the hippies and the slackers in town there. Did you have any idea that you could take this thing and turn it into this huge national brand? Did you think about changing habits when it comes to what Americans eat? Were you thinking along those lines back then?
Clearly not at the beginning. I mean, Renee and I were just kids. I mean, when we first started working on the first store, I was 24 and Renee was 20. And we just would say we wanted to sell healthy food to people, earn a living, and have some fun. All three of those things are still alive at Whole Foods today, so they didn't go away. But obviously, Whole Foods grew. And I really didn't think about it being really big until we opened our first store in California. I was with my girlfriend on this road trip, and we were visiting LA, and then we went up to the Bay Area. We got to the Bay Area, and there were no natural food supermarkets there. And I thought, why can't we come here? And we did. And once we got there, Palo Alto, Berkeley, Mill Valley, San Francisco, we kind of exploded there. And it was like, we could be a national company. That's the first time I began to think that way.
So there were hundreds, if not thousands, of these natural food stores.
They were
one
small.
in every town in
They were
Vermont.
small.
Right, they're small. But how come you were able to do this or did do this as opposed to some other couple or guy or woman running a store somewhere else?
I think there are a lot of reasons. Of course, I do explore all those in the book, or many of them in the book. I think one thing, I had the drive and ambition to do it. I wanted to do it. I just thought building a company, I'm an entrepreneur. I didn't know I was an entrepreneur. I was not going to be a successful professional probably. In my heart of hearts, I like creating things, I like building them, I like growing them. And I had the passion to do that. One of my co-founders was so angry at me for growing the company because our first Whole Foods Market store became so profitable. He told me, he said, John, well, let's not screw this up. We've got a gold mine here. We can just mine this gold for decades. We're rich. We've got it made. It's like, I don't want to mine gold. I want to build a company. And he ended up leaving the company because he told me, he called me Wackey Mackey. You are nuts. You are going to destroy this business. I don't want anything to do with it. That was not a good decision on his part.
Hey, I'm curious, what do you think about Trader Joe's?
Trader Joe's is in the book. I admire Trader Joe's. In fact, the former president of Trader Joe's, Doug Rao, is a close personal friend of mine and one of the co-founders of the conscious capitalism movement. So, as Doug said, Whole Foods made Trader Joe's a better company, and Trader Joe's made Whole Foods a better company. You know why? He told me a story. Do you know why Trader Joe's didn't go into the East Coast? Someone from Whole Foods anonymously sent them our financial statements in the mail, and they just were delivered. And he said they were so knocked off their feet by how successful we were doing in all through Washington and Boston and just getting going in New York. They said, we got to go there too. So Whole Foods and Trader Joe's destiny has been kind of intertwined.
Fascinating. My understanding is that the Columbus Circle store here in New York City and Manhattan was the biggest or most profitable or best store that Whole Foods has had. Is that the case? It
has a long time been our highest sales volume store in the company. Although interestingly enough, our Brooklyn store sometimes is the only one that's kind of knocked that off its perch. So we've had a rivalry between Manhattan and Brooklyn, kind of like that sort of reasserting itself today. But that Columbus Circle store was in many ways the most important store we ever opened. Because once we opened that store in Manhattan, the media discovered us. Nobody was interested in what we were doing. But when we opened in the Time Warner Center and it was just doing a crazy sales volume, they discovered Whole Foods Market. And so that was both good and bad, because once the media discovers you, they loved us for a while and then they started to hate us.
Right. Well, they'll build you up and take you down.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes. So diet, food, very important to you. You also wrote the Whole Foods Diet and the Whole Foods Cookbook.
Right.
You're a vegan.
Yes.
Talk to us about that. I mean, what do you like to eat, for instance, John? What are your favorite foods?
I like all plant foods. I love fruits and vegetables, nuts, grains, beans. I like to cook. I love food. I thought it might catch on when I wrote the Whole Foods Diet, co-authored the Whole Foods Diet. I called myself a whole foodie. Mm-hmm. So there's foodies, and I was a whole foodie. But no one really got the joke. It never caught on. But I eat a diversity of basically plant foods. I'm what I call an ethical vegan. I really just don't. I love animals. I just don't want to kill them.
What do you think about plant-based meats, Beyond Burgers, and all those kinds of things?
I think they're ethically superior to meat, but I don't necessarily think they're such a highly processed foods in most cases that I don't think they're necessarily super healthy for you.
Yeah. So how would we ever? Is it possible to have plant-based meat foods or substitutes without it being really heavily processed, though? I mean, that's always going to be a problem.
For me, there's no problem because, if I eat a veggie burger, you can make one just out of black beans and some quinoa or something like that. So it can be a whole food. It doesn't have to be super processed, but it doesn't taste as much like meat. So the meat substitutes are literally trying to create something that has the same mouthfeel and basically is flavor profile very similar to what you would get with meat. I don't need that personally. I've been so long since I ever ate any meat that I don't even kind of remember what it tastes like. So,
do you eat fish, by the way? Just
no.
curious. Okay. Wow. Shifting gears a little bit, you are famous for sharing your opinions. You were sort of a blogger. You were an original gangster blogger. I mean, you were blogging way back before it was cool to blog. What do you think about that? About CEOs and top executives communicating directly? And what do you think about what Elon Musk does?
That's different questions. So
Okay.
I'll tackle the first one first. Yep. I paid a heavy price for it. I mean, I was doing back in the day before he had social media. I was posting with a screen name, as like everyone else did, on Yahoo financial boards, and I had fun. Basically, I like to argue and debate. So I was debating with the shorts and defending Whole Foods Market, and sometimes taking a pot shot at a competitor from time to time, Trader Joe's or Wild Oats or whatever.
Right.
And when we were trying to do the Wild Oats merger, somehow or another, and the Federal Trade Commission was trying to block it. Were calling us a monopolist, and they, somehow or another, they found out about my posting on Yahoo, and then that showed up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and the next thing I know, I'm under a SEC investigation for insider trading. Do you remember the movie It's a Beautiful Mind? And when John Nash was going kind of crazy, and he had all these secret codes he was getting on the newspaper. The SEC thought maybe I was coding information into my post on Yahoo. So they did this investigation. And of course, that's nonsense. And then they went out. You think it dropped? Then no. Then they found out I'd been shorting Wild Oats from time to time, and so they were accusing me of insider trading because. My reasoning, Andy, was if Whole Foods was having a bad quarter, Wild Oats might be having a bad quarter too. I didn't have any inside information, but I just thought it made logical sense. But their whole claim fell apart because I didn't short them just before quarters, and so that dropped. But anyway, I had a thing with the government. I felt like it was trying to take me down because I had SEC and FTC both after me. But I learned a lesson. I've never blogged again. And then when I did a Wall Street Journal editorial op-ed piece back in 2009 on healthcare, that blew up, and it was national news, and people were demanding I get fired, and there were boycotts, and it was protests in front of our stores. It was incredible. My board told me, never write another op-ed piece we haven't personally approved.
Right.
So how do I feel about it? I kind of think CEOs should kind of stick to business. It's because we live in this polarized time. Now you asked me about Elon Musk.
Yeah.
But first of all, I know Elon Musk. He's one of my heroes. I love what Elon Musk does, and he gets away with it because he's a genius, and he's the wealthiest man or second or third wealthiest man in the world, and he's able to do things ordinary CEOs can't do in that sense. But do I think he sometimes says things he shouldn't say? Absolutely. I think you've got to be responsible for your company, for your stakeholders. I mean, he's been able to rise above it. Most people can't do that. I couldn't do it.
And final question, John. What's so great about pickleball?
Have you ever played?
Nope.
Pickleball is so much fun. Unlike tennis, which it takes a lot of skill to have any fun at it, with pickleball, the very first time you play, you may not even think you're very coordinated. You'll enjoy the game. And that's why it's sweeping America, because aging baby boomers can get out and play it, children can play it, and they can play together. And it's an intensely social game. I've made so many friends playing pickleball. Try it, and then you'll understand.
John Mackey, co-founder of Whole Foods and author of the new book, The Whole Story. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Andy.
This is at Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer. We'll catch you next time.